Good morning. Good morning. Well, it's a Friday again, and looking forward to another weekend. And hope everyone is doing great. Shout out to some of my regulars, Teresa and Liz and Quentin and Olivia, Nick, Marianne, and anyone else joining in. I really appreciate the support and the prayers that we can all learn the Bible together. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. I sometimes check it out when it's actually, just so you know, I record these actually the night before because it takes from my home. I don't have the type of system where I can do them live. So, but I do occasionally check in and look at any questions you might have and look forward to anything that you want to share. Something interesting you thought about when you heard about some of the stuff we talk about. So let's start with a prayer and invite the Holy Spirit into our little Bible study. Oh Lord, dear Heavenly Father, thank you, Father, so much for this time we get to look in your word, the freedoms we share that we can, without any uh, hesitation, enjoy learning about you. And please be here with us to help us to understand your word. And we give you all the praise and thanks. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So Abraham's at it again. Another interesting story about him and his wife. And I thought of a quote that I'll bring up here in a minute when I was reading this again. Uh, for now, we'll just start off with a map. And Abraham has decided that he's had enough of the Hebron area, so he's going to head to the south from there. And so it's about 30 miles as the crow flies from where he was in Miramar, which is just above Hebron. Miramar is right above it. I get my bigger cursor. Here you see Hebron. Oh, yeah, Miramar is like right above it. So they're almost neighbors. And he is going to move south. I guess that would be southwest to Gerar down here. And he's going to meet another king that seems to find his wife attractive. But some interesting thoughts in the commentary that I read that kind of makes this a little more interesting story as to why. Because remember where we're at here. Abraham's about 100 years old, and his wife Sarah is about 90. Now, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of ladies out there that look really good in their older age. But it's interesting to contemplate that this particular Sarah is getting ready to have a baby. And but not yet. So let's first tackle this little journey and some things we learn along the way about being about honesty. So starting here in chapter 20, verse 1. And Abraham journeyed from thence toward the south country and dwelled between Kadesh and Shur and sojourned in Gerar. In case you ever, I've never mentioned it before, sojourn means to temporarily stay somewhere. Abraham still was more of a traveler, a man of tents, and that was quite common in the nomadic tribes of this area. Actually, there's still some there today that basically live out of tents. Verses. So it's interesting enough that Abraham's son Isaac will experience a similar issue with his wife here also. We're going to read that when we get to chapter 26, but a little brief interlude. But I'm sure that this king is going to be fed up with the Abraham's descendants. But let's look at this real quick. And there was a famine in the land beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. And Isaac dwelt in Gerar. And the man of the place asked him of his wife, and he said, She is my sister, for he feared to say, She is my wife. Least said he, the man of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. We'll get into that story more when we get into that section. But it's funny that I'm doing this as a comparison that sometimes the as the old saying goes, the acorn don't fall far from the tree. Abraham being the dad of Isaac, and they kind of have a similar thought pattern. So it seems to be an issue in this family, as this is the second time Abraham told a half truth due to fear. Reminds me of his nephew also that we just saw. Fear kind of motivated him too in Genesis 19:18 and 19. And Lot said unto them, Oh, not so, my lord. Behold, now the servant hath found grace in thy sight, and thou hast magnified thy mercy, which thou hast showed unto me in saving my life. And I cannot escape to the mountain, lest some evil take me and I die. Well, that was the excuse Lot used to go to uh, the other town here. It's not far from here. I think it's on this map. Yeah, Zor. That made him go to Zor. I remember that story. That was just yesterday. Okay. So it seems to be a dominant trait in this family, especially since the angels told them they would not get hurt. Remember that in Lot's case, the angels actually told him that they had to remove him out of the danger before they could destroy the city. That's also a good reason why I think that Abraham could be leaving the area. He could probably still see the smoldering smoke coming up from Sodom and Gomorrah, and probably doesn't know what happened to Lot. And he may not have ever heard how he fared on that. He might be thinking he did not fare out too well, and so that could be a reason why he decided to move. Not sure, the Bible doesn't really spell it out. But it seems to be his wife's beauty and his demise, as he will state in his excuse to the king in verse 13. We'll get to that when we get to verse 13. I'll just read it here real quick. And it came to pass, when God caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said unto her, This is thy kindness which thou shalt show unto me. At every place whether we should come, say of me, He is my brother. So they made up this deal ahead of time, him and Sarah. Okay, so back to where we were at in Genesis 20, verse 2. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, She is my sister, and Amalek king of Gerar sent and took Sarah. So I'll say that at least in these two husbands' eyes, their wives were very beautiful. As we look back at that verse, Genesis 12:13, and this is Isaac. Say I pray. This is the first time he went to Pharaoh. So I pray thee that thou art my sister, that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. So at least I'll tell you one thing, that these wives definitely knew that their husbands thought they were very beautiful. That was definitely a positive. I'm sure that was a pleasant thing for Sarah and Rebecca to hear. But now, how do these ladies avoid having an affair with these kings? Very sticky situation. I remember a quote once, and let me bring in my next pictures. So a couple of pictures I found of the ruins in Gerar. So there was definitely a town there. And this is one set of ruins. It's a community house with different rooms. And this is just another picture I found. Some tourists around a structure from Abraham's time. Probably most likely this bottom rocks is from Abraham's time, and the upper rocks is from a later period. You find that a lot. In the middle, they'll build right on top of something else. But here, it reminds me of a saying by Sir Walter Scott. Have you ever heard that name before? Oh, what a tangle web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Remember that from my childhood, I think I heard that saying. I probably was quoted it by my parents one time. I thought it was kind of a cute little picture. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when we first practice to deceive. I know sometimes it feels like it's easier to get in trouble. You'd rather get in trouble than to. I remember another old saying we used to say as kids: "I'd rather bear the shame than to bear the pain." When it comes to admitting to being wrong. But back to our verses. We also got a verse. Oh, yeah, we got another one. I was wondering, why I was talking about Isaac and the two brothers, and I forgot to show you the verse in Genesis 26:7. And the men of this place asked him of his wife, and he said, "She is my sister." For he feared to say, "She is my wife." Least say he, the men of this place, should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. Sorry, got a little out of sequence. So that's the two husbands I was talking about. Now we go back to verse 3. A little background here on this family tradition of not admitting that their wives are their wives. But God came to Amalek in a dream by night and said to him, "Behold, thou art but a dead man, for the woman which thou hast taken, for she is a man's wife." So now God is going to step in. And like I always like to say, but God, God's not going to let Abraham get away with this. And so he gave Amalek a dream because he was trying to protect. And the other thing God is trying to do is protect Sarah. She was going to be bearing the child Isaac, and that there couldn't be any other offspring to deal with, and there couldn't be any other man's seed in Sarah. So God had to step in, I'm sure, to make sure that she didn't get pregnant by another man. That's always a good thing to remember. As humans, we are sinners, and praise God, He is watching out for us. Boy, can I attest to that. One other thing I read in a commentary is Abraham said of Sarah, his wife, "She is my sister." Abraham's concern was probably not because Sarah looked like a young beauty at 90 years of age. We can surmise that she was reasonably attractive at that age, but more importantly, she was connected to one of the richest and most influential men of the region. In that day, a harem was sometimes more of a political statement than a romantic statement. And I can think of another example of that. Is that that's what got Solomon in so much trouble. He had like 1,000 wives. And I'm willing to bet he did not like really have relations with all 1,000. That a lot of times wives were just given to him by other world leaders, and to save face with those leaders. A lot of times that you would say yes, just so you had a good relationship with them. And so that was the idea of the harem. And in every harem, you hear these stories that there was always favorites, that the kings had favorites. So that could have been the other thing going on here, is that this man Aramech wanted to, because Abraham was pretty wealthy. I remember he seems to be collecting things everywhere he goes, and he had quite a influential. At the same time, we should not ignore the idea of Sarah's continued attractiveness, even in old age. She had in some measure been physically rejuvenated. Remember, she's getting ready to have a baby soon. She's not pregnant yet. We'll talk about that when we get to it. But the reason that God may have been telling her that He'll return to her at that period of her time when she's ready, that He was going to work on getting her ready to be pregnant. And that could have been kind of like giving her a big, a complete overhaul, getting her body back into its childbearing years. So she could have been very young and attractive looking from that standpoint also. A man by the name of Morris quoted that. I'm not sure who he is, but it made a lot of sense when I read it. We get a hint of that in what the Lord said in Genesis 18:10. Let's go back and look at that real quick. And he said, "I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son." And Sarah heard in the tent door, which was behind him. So God kind of hinted there that he's going to return. He didn't go right then and there. He's going to return to the time of life. He's going to return her to the time of life. And Sarah shall have a son. So she might have been spending this period of time kind of getting rejuvenated to be ready. Kind of an interesting thought. I'm sure she was really liking that part. Something we're all looking forward to, I think. And when we think about the rapture, and people often speculate, how old do you think God is going to make us when we get our new bodies? And most people like to base it on when Jesus was raptured or taken back to heaven. He was somewhere around his early 30s. So that most people think that maybe that is the typical time frame that we'll spend eternity, around 30 years old. Wouldn't be that cool. That's like at least for me, that was about the best time of my life. Physically, I could do almost anything I needed to do. And, fairly young, that was a pretty good time in my life physically, which I made some better choices back then, but that's water under the bridge now. So well done here. I think as a Amalek had not come near to her, and he said, "Lord, wilt thou slay also a righteous nation?" So I guess Amalek did not touch her and did not come into her and lie with her, as we know that's the typical term. So well done, I think, as Amalek did believe in the Lord due to this, and is in good company when it comes to repentance. Just a couple of verses on that in Genesis 18:23. Here, Abraham is repenting. And Abraham drew near and said, "Wilt thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked?" That was something he was putting in front of God, talking to God about whether he was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah or not. Well, I guess there wasn't any righteous there. Well, they get the only righteous out of town first. And David talks about it in Numbers 16:22. And they fell upon their faces and said, "O God, the God of spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin, and wilt thou be wroth with the whole congregation?" So there David was pleading for his people. David had really messed up, and God was going to punish him. But he was also going to punish his nation for the mistake he made. He disobeyed God when it came to taking a census. I believe this is the story. And so he's turning back to God, saying that because one man sinned, you're going to destroy, you're going to bring wrath down on the whole congregation. Well, God made it even worse in that scenario. He basically gave that option to David, and David had to choose what punishment was going to be taken upon on Israel. Okay, back to Genesis 20, verse 5. Said he unto me, she is my sister, and she herself said, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocency of my hands have I done this. That's like talking. And God said unto him in a dream, Yea, I know that thou didst this in the integrity of thy heart. For I also withheld thee from sinning against me. Therefore suffered I thee not to touch her. Here's God having a conversation with this pagan king. It sounds a lot like that he maybe had some beliefs, but he's not going to do anything. And I think that he had a really strong desires for her. Or God probably wouldn't have been this insistent on making sure he didn't do anything. Because God does give us free will, and even though we don't always listen to him. I know for sure I don't always listen to him. I should have. But God answered him, withheld thee like he has others. Here, David also in 1 Samuel 25:26. Now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, seeing the Lord hath withheld thee from coming to shed blood, and from avenging thyself with thine own hand, now let thine enemies and they that seek evil to my Lord be as Nabal. Jumping down to verse 34. For in every deed as the Lord God of Israel liveth, which hath kept me back from hurting thee, except thou hast hasted and come to meet me, surely there had not been left unto Nabal by the morning light any that pisses against the wall. That's a funny term. Basically, what God is saying there, or what David is saying there, is that he's only talking about the men. So that when he said something like that, it's kind of a funny way of saying it, but basically he was singling out men versus women. But basically, in this particular story, David had decided not to avenge the death of I think some of his. I think it had to do with Saul, and that he had chosen not to slay death on anyone. I mainly wanted to point out the fact that other people too have used restraint when it comes to being uh, wanting to do something but not carrying it out. Maybe not the best example, but there was one I found that I thought was kind of interesting. especially that way he kind of described men versus women. So against God, in that particular verse there, it says against God in verse 6. Wouldn't do anything against God. And I just wanted to speak briefly on that. In Genesis 39:9. This will be a story we get to. We get to Joseph. And here's another, this is a perfect example of somebody who was able to not give in to his desires and to do what was right. This is Joseph with Potiphar's wife. There was none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? But even if we sin and are forgiven sometimes, there are consequences we will have to live with. And probably the most famous case of this is David. I remember David that slept with Bathsheba, and actually to try to cover it up, he had his her husband killed uh, in war, but arranged it so that he would die. And the consequences of that is there was a child born out of that union between David and Bathsheba. That baby ended up dying as a consequence of their sin and what they had done. And just a few verses there kind of speak to it. It's 2 Samuel 12. I read verses 13 and 14. And David said unto Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said unto David, the Lord also hath put away thy sin. Thou shalt not die. Howbeit, because by this deed thou hast given great occasion to the enemies of the Lord to blaspheme, the child also that is born unto thee shall surely die. So Nathan here was a prophet then, and he was speaking to David about this affair and what was going to happen. So David wasn't too surprised when that son died. But he had two more sons by by Bathsheba, and they both had a definite role in the genealogy leading up to Jesus. One was Solomon had was Solomon, who ended up being in the line of Joseph uh, that was married to Mary, and the other one was Nathan, another son of David and Bathsheba, and he ended up being the descendant going all the way to Mary, and so that's how they were able to keep the Judean, the the legal line and the bloodline of Jesus intact. Was that? It's an amazing story how God arranged that. That's a really neat story. Okay, back to this one now here in Genesis 20, verse 7. Now therefore restore the man his wife, for he is a prophet, and he shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live. And if thou restore her not, know thou that thou shalt surely die, thou and all that are thine. God is really spending his time here to make sure that Amalek doesn't is fully aware of what will happen if he continues with this thought pattern. So I get the impression here that he really wants her. So he's having a tough time making this decision. So God's really laying it on thick. But he's making sure that he knows that God is going to punish him if he continues with his thought idea, the consequences of what he does. By the way, I thought I'd mention here too, a prophet here is not someone who tells the future, but it's similar to, I remember Aaron and Moses story. Moses had complained that he was not good at speaking in public. Some people believe he had a stutter or something along that lines. It doesn't say in the Bible, but he was talking to God that he wasn't able to speak well. And so God had given him a spokesperson, Aaron, his brother-in-law. No, his brother. I'm sorry, his brother. And so Aaron was considered a prophet because he was good at speaking. He had an excellent eloquence and literary abilities. So this title was also given to men eminent for eloquence and literary abilities. Some examples of that over in Exodus 4, 15, and 16. I have to put them in here. Let me get them in here real quick. example here kind of speaks about the same thing. It's in Exodus 4:15 and 16. And thou shalt speak unto him and put words in his mouth, and I will be with thy mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you what you shall do. And he shall be thy spokesman unto the people, and he shall be to thee instead of a mouth, and thou shalt be to him instead of a God. So God had already told him that he was going to give him the words to say, but I guess Moses was still concerned about it. So that's why God uh, was also going to speak through Moses, but also through Aaron. That's what he's basically saying there. And Paul alludes to this also, because it can also be like a teacher and an intercessor, as Paul alludes to in 1 Corinthians 14:4. He that speaketh in an unknown tongue edifieth himself, but he that prophesies edifies the church. So that's talking about somebody who is speaking about the word of God uh, in a tongue that people can understand. So that's what a prophet is also. It's not well used today because I think people get it confused with foretelling the future, but it does have that other meaning. So I just thought I'd point that out. Moving on, verse 8 of chapter 20 of Genesis. Therefore Amalek rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told all these things in their ears, and the men were sore afraid. And Amalek called Abraham and said unto him, Why hast thou done unto us, and what have I offended thee, that thou hast brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin? Thou hast done deeds unto me that ought not to be done. And Amalek said unto Abraham, What sawest thou that thou hast done this thing? And verse 11 here, and Abraham said, Because I thought surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my mother's wife's sake. That's a definite fear. I'm not sure it's one thing I kind of felt about this, and I'm not sure this is necessarily the case, but the one thing I thought about was the fact that where was Abraham? Abraham had a lot of faith uh, compared to a lot of people, but where was his faith when it come to just telling the truth and allowing God to take care of the situation? And I kind of saw it talking about fear over in Psalm 19:9. The fear of the Lord is clear and clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. And talking about being slayed over in Genesis 12:12. Therefore it shall come to pass when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, This is my wife, this is his wife, and will kill me, but they will save thee alive. So that was the other time that Abraham lied about him being, didn't lie, but didn't offer the information that she was also his wife. He used the sister routine. So to me, it kind of shows too that Abraham didn't have enough faith in this area to trust that God was going to settle the situation. And I think that might be what leads to what happens with Isaac and what God does here in the future. It's also that particular case, we'll talk about when we get there. It's the famous time that he's told to go up and sacrifice Isaac. We'll get to that. It's down the road a little bit. For Isaac's not even born yet, so we got a ways to go. Therefore it shall come to pass when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, This is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. Now, going back to Genesis 20, verse 12, didn't mean to reread that. And yet indeed she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. So in a way, he wasn't completely lying. I guess people would call that a half-truth, because he was also his wife, and he didn't offer that information. I think we're all guilty of that. Answer a question asked, question answered type of situation. And it came to pass when God caused me to wander from my father's house that I said unto her, This is thy kindness which thou shalt show unto me, at every place whither we shall come. Say of me, He is my brother. And Amalek took sheep and oxen and men servant and women servant and gave them unto Abraham and restored him Sarah his wife. And Amalek said, Behold, my land is before thee, dwell where it pleases thee. See, up to this point too, that this curse that had been put on his kingdom is still in effect. So he's being really nice here, because I don't know if I mentioned that, but the thing that was going to say it here in a minute. And unto Sarah he said, Behold, I have given thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, he is thee a covering of the eyes, until all that are with thee, with all other that she was reproved. So Abraham prayed unto God, and God healed Amalek and his wife and his maidservants, and they bare children. So I guess the thing that God had done is that He had stopped, He had closed the wombs of all the women in Gerar here, and so that was the curse that God had put on them for this deed. Yeah, because it says right here, for God had closed up all the wombs of the house of Amalek because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. So I guess we are responding back to a verse in chapter 12, verse 17. It fits in here well. And the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarah, Abram's wife. And so that's what caused Pharaoh to question what Sarai was, who she really was. So that was that chapter, and not a really exciting chapter, but learned some valuable lessons about maybe making sure that we're in certain situations that we tell the truth, and allow the chips to fall where they may, but also trust in the Lord. I think that's probably the most valuable lesson. And so we will head in. So it's the week's done. So we'll head into chapter 21 next week. I haven't even looked at it yet, so I don't even sure what it's about. Uh, Let me look real quick. Let me see if it jogs my memory. Oh yeah, it's when the Lord is going to revisit Sarah and to prepare her to be a mother again. So let's end with a prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this time and looking at your words, and as hard as it is, Lord, at times that we want to do things our way and take things in our own hands, but that you are always there and you know what's best. And you can see the future and know exactly what's always best in every situation. So help us, Lord, to always keep our eyes on you and that we can look to you for guidance. And we praise you and thank you so much. In Jesus' precious name I pray. Amen. So it's actually pretty good, though, that God has given us all these great examples of how we should live, and that I sometimes wish I would have studied some of this stuff much earlier in my life, and that things might have turned out a little differently. But can't change them now, so all I can do is push forward into the future. And like the plow scene, you got your hand to the plow and just keep moving forward, looking forward. Don't look back. That's when your life will get all messed up. Okay, we'll see you guys on Sunday, and hope you have a good Saturday. Love you all. Have a great day.